Hello friends, and welcome back to Bigfoot Lake. Thanks for joining us. Sitting back these last few days, I could look up at the mountain and see this green cloud of pollen just drifting through the air down among us, and currently have a pretty nasty allergy cold because of it. So if I sound a little different, that's why, but we've got a couple amazing stories to share. And we got the fire going hot here at Bigfoot Lake. So with that being said, pull up a stump and get comfortable as we dive into the first of our two amazing encounters. I have never been one for having an interest in the unknown or the paranormal, but when someone you trust tells of an experience from their past, sometimes you have to give the benefit of the doubt. My grandfather told me this story back in 1991, a few years before he passed away, and so it goes. My grandfather worked from the late 1950s to the early 70s as a landscaper on the Doris Duke Estate in Somerset, New Jersey. When he told us this story to my sister and I, he was foggy when giving the exact dates, but he was still very sharp and explained it with incredible detail. My grandfather's job was to manicure and care for the lawns in the north section of the property, whatever that meant, and other various duties. He said that in the summer of 1972, one August afternoon, he was told by the head groundskeeper that he would be working overtime and that he was needed because a shipment was being delivered from Wisconsin. They needed about 8 men to unload a crate and bring it into the garden area. That night, the truck arrived and it was getting late. The men who were asked to stay for overtime were eager to get things done and over with and be on their way. When the truck pulled up, my grandfather said the crate was about 8 feet tall and 5 feet wide. When he asked what was inside it, the one in charge said they were exotic trees. What happened next was enough to make half of the team get up and walk off the job and not care about the consequences. When the men started pushing the crate off of the flatbed truck, a blood-curdling scream was unleashed from within that box. All of the men let go of their grip and the crate fell to the floor. As everyone jumped back, realizing that this was anything but a tree, the head keeper did all he could do to save the contents' real identity, and said that there was a black bear inside of it. While the men were regaining their composure, most of the help walked off the job. They said they didn't want to get hurt or mauled dealing with a wild animal without the proper safety equipment, so off they went, including my grandfather. Only 2 men stayed to finish what they were asked. This is what was told to my grandfather. The 2 remaining men managed to get the load onto a dolly and then dragged it into the garden compound. While guiding the crate down the main path, balance was lost and the crate came off the wheels. The crate hit hard enough to crack the side of the crate and loosened the side panel, which fell off and exposed the contents. What the 2 remaining men witnessed that night was enough to make them seek employment elsewhere. What I am telling you was how it was told to me. Inside the crate sat a creature that had the shape of a man, but was anything but a man. They couldn't give a height measurement since the creature was in a sitting position, but they said it was huge. It had the shape of a man with a very large frame, only it was covered with black hair. The creature was strapped down and had shackles on its legs and feet and arms. The face didn't look like a man, but had some human features. The workers said it looked more like a monkey or a gorilla. The hair was extremely long and dirty. At one point, one of the men said they thought that this thing was trying to speak or communicate with words, but all it did was kept on drooling. They were under the impression that this creature was heavily sedated because it couldn't keep its head up straight. It rested its head on its chest. A couple of inches away from the creature's head was an empty water bottle nailed to the wall. On the other side of the creature was an IV stand connected to the wall and stuck to its arm. It might have been used to feed this creature during its transport. One of the oddest parts to this story was that my grandfather was told that this creature was sitting on a rocking chair. I could never understand this. After thinking more about it, though, I thought it was maybe to prevent this creature from getting cramps during the move. They also said that the odor was overpowering and enough to make anyone pass out. The combined smells of urine, waste, and body odor was rank. My grandfather stuck by this story until the very end. About 2 weeks before he passed away, my sister reminded me to bring it up again and confront him, which I did. There was no need to go over the story again because we both knew how it went. I just looked at him and asked him, "Papa, remember the crate you had to move in Jersey?" He just looked at me, smiled, and said, "Of course." I said, "Did you embellish at all?" He said, "No, there was no need to do that. No reason to. It happened the way I said it happened." I said, "Because now would be the time to tell me." He looked at me and said, "You want to know if I embellished the story. The truth is that I am guilty of the opposite. There was so much that I left out. The story was just the beginning. Remember something. I worked there for 2 more years after that. There are things that a young mind just should not hear." I said, "But I am not a child anymore. I am sure I can handle what it is that you have to say." Grandfather said, "Tomorrow I will finish the story. Come back tomorrow." But there was no tomorrow. Grandfather passed away at 2 a.m. that morning in the hospital. So that's the conclusion of our first encounter. And that one brings up a lot of feelings. First and foremost is sadness of this. Sure sounds like a Bigfoot in a crate, shackled, sedated. I sure wish we could have got the rest of that story to see if it had a happy ending or perhaps not. So that was the first encounter. I really appreciate your thoughts on that one. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. It means a lot to us. And if you have any thoughts on this, leave us a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this encounter. So with that being said, we're going to move into our second encounter of the night. And this actually kind of ties in with the first one anyway. It's from a different author, of course, but seeing how that first encounter, how that Sasquatch was treated with the shackles and the chains and in the crate, maybe it would explain a little bit of why things happened the way they did in this second encounter. So let's dive in to encounter number 2. And the author of this encounter wanted to remain anonymous, not only in name, but he didn't even really want to list what state, or because I think he just wanted to protect what he refers to as his friends. So with that being said, let's dive into encounter number 2. I can't really call this an encounter, as an encounter is typically a one-time event, often with no other experiences. I guess I would classify this as more of an adventure, one that earlier in my life I could have hardly even fathomed. I'm not really much of a storyteller, so being able to put in writing what my eyes have seen and what my ears have heard doesn't come easy. I'll do my best. I grew up in the sticks. You couldn't really call it a town, or even a village for that matter. Our closest neighbors were miles away. I guess you could say that the forest was our community. Growing up like that, completely enveloped in the sounds and smells of nature, is something I look back on now and smile. So much of today's world revolves around the hustle and bustle of everyday life. It's rare that one stops, even if just for a moment, and appreciates God's creation. Back then, I was one with the forest. I can't, in all honesty, say that to be true now. Life has a way of doing that, you know? Distracting you just enough so that your attention is demanded by today's pressures. But it wasn't always so for me. The forest was my distraction. My parents never had to worry about where I was. They knew where I was. If I wasn't up a tree or catching fish somewhere, I was somewhere in those woods. Spending that much time by myself in nature, I became tuned in with the frequencies. All the sights, the sounds, smells, they became part of me. This is how I grew up. I always knew deep down that I wasn't truly alone in those hills. Whether it be a smell that, while completely natural, stood out a bit, or a sound that was perhaps a bit louder than the surrounding forest, or a silence that would fall, the normal chirping and buzzing growing quiet, or a feeling that eyes were looking upon me from somewhere just beyond my line of sight, perhaps in the shadows of the trees. It's hard to put these experiences in writing. They were more of a feeling deep inside. I always knew I wasn't alone, yet I was never afraid. I considered whatever or whoever they were to be my friends. I hoped they thought the same of me. Often I would leave a little food behind for them, usually a few fish I would catch that day. Upon returning, I would usually find signs of typical forest creatures, raccoons, minks, birds, and insects. But every once in a while, that didn't seem to be the case, and the fish would simply be gone. I always hoped my friends had found them. Throughout the years, my friends would allow me an occasional glimpse of a very large, shadowy figure, close enough to notice, yet concealed enough to remain a mystery. Somehow, that was enough for me. Perhaps they had encountered other people before and had less than pleasant experiences. Is this why they stayed in the shadows? I can't say that I blame them. Many of my interactions with people haven't been great either. Sometimes I wish I could stay in the shadows, like my friends. I think we could all learn a lot from them. I know for certain that I have, mostly about friendship. Just a young boy, in tune with nature, blessed enough that my friends of the forest chose to reveal themselves to me. I wish you could see my smile as I write this. I can't imagine ever being more content in life than I was back then. I often think back to those days and about my friends of the forest. The only true friends I think I've ever really had. Even after all these years, I wonder if they are still there. I wonder if I could go back there today, if I could block out all the noise of the world, just sit and listen, not just with my ears, but listen with my quieted soul. What would I find there? I wonder if after a certain point, after life has chewed you up a bit, is it even possible to get back there? Oh, what I would give to be back there, sitting under a canopy of those trees, listening for the subtle signs that always let me know that my friends were there. So that concludes our second story of the evening, and I absolutely loved that story. And the author speaks of why they stayed in the shadows and possibly an interaction with other people. After reading the first encounter of tonight, I have to say that I can't blame them for wanting to stay in the shadows. What do you guys think? If you guys enjoyed the encounters for tonight, I really appreciate a thumbs up and leave a comment. Let us know what you think about them. You guys control this channel. You guys are the driving force behind Bigfoot Lake. Without you guys, none of this can even happen. So if you just take a moment, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment. You're kicking that algorithm. You're kicking it and showing it that you guys enjoy this content. So it means a lot to us. So with that being said, I think we're going to put out the fire for tonight and wrap things up here. I hope you enjoyed both encounters. Let me know what you think. And if you have an encounter to share, big or small, please reach out to us. You see the email up on the screen there. We would love to share your story, your encounter. As I said, it is you guys who are the driving force behind Bigfoot Lake and make it possible. So thanks again. We appreciate you all. Hope you all have a great night, and we'll see you next time.